Steering wheel, somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing you could say could make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Well, hello and welcome to DRS FC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. Tonight is a special edition of DRS FC. It is ladies' night. Get excited, and that is because you are getting your podcast feeds graced by the lovely Deepti over in London. Deepti, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great, Megan. It is a bit late here, but I'm like amped up, and like this weekend I stayed up to watch this race because I watched it after the NWSL Championship. Congrats to the Bats. And this race started at 4 a.m. and I was already awake, so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna stay awake and watch it. And it was great.
People think that soccer celebrity in front of the podcast, Douglas Reyes Cerrone, is the like ultimate night owl, but the real run is Deepti, who frequently records these at like midnight her time, and then, as you just heard, ran a race after staying up all night, and she is a crazy person. But we love her anyway. I am Megan Dooley. I am officially 34 years old, and we celebrated by going to Delulu Island. Thank you. Delulu Island for this race. And while it was not the Delulu Island I pictured, some might say it's the Delulu Island I secretly wanted all along. So, Deepti, let's talk a little bit about the race. Neither you nor I got to talk about this on the preview podcast, so I am taking the authority vested in me by being the one on the podcast with the mic to talk about what did the circuit look like before we talk about what happened. So, Deepti, I need you to give me your best impression of what the circuit looked like.
Oh my gosh. You know what? As soon as I saw it, I also thought of Spider Pig, and I don't know if I
Oh
can think
my
of
gosh,
anything
I'm not
less
even
than
kidding. That is also what I thought. So funny that we all have the same brain. I hadn't even looked at what everyone else said, but that is exactly what I thought. I started singing Spider Pig in my head.
Same wavelength here.
Oh my gosh.
I was trying to see if there's anything else that jumped out, but it literally is just Spider Pig.
The only other thing I can think of is like sort of brass knuckles, but not even really. Like it's just like barely like maybe like brass knuckles from a weird angle. I don't know. Who knows? Next week we'll, I'm sure, be back to DRSFC After Dark. So I'm sure I'll come up with some really horrific thing that it looks like. But for right now, we're gonna go with Spider Pig. So now that we've gotten the critically important what does the grid look like out of the way, Deepti, what'd you think about the race?
Well, I'll talk about the start of the weekend as a whole. Who knew that it could rain so much in Vegas?
Yeah, famously the desert.
Yeah, it was like flooding, like severely flooding on much of the track a couple days before qualifying and before like free practices. Qualifying was a wet one, and like the emotional support wet tire was made like put to use, no longer just for emotional support. Like they actually used it, and like I tweeted or skeeted out, I don't think anyone thought that Las Vegas would be the first time that we would see the wet tire in use this season. No one had that on their bingo card. What's
that mean when you accidentally become critically important at work? I feel like that's how the wet tire felt at work this weekend.
Like, oh,
and you're right. It did look like a biblical level of flood, which led to a pretty wild qualifying, just in how, not necessarily in how the qualifying went, but like the results of the qualifying felt a little wild. And then
we saw Lance Stroll in not provisional pole, but like after Q1 and Q2, who's up there. And who would have thought? I don't think he expected to be up there.
He did not seem to know what he was doing with his hands in that moment. Like, I feel like an imposter. So yeah, the qualifying I think was a little interesting. Some behind the scenes, Deepti and I, before we hopped on, were like, this wasn't the most entertaining race, but the discussion around the race is really interesting. So we'll kind of briefly recap some highlights from the race. I think to me, the biggest thing that comes out of this race is Lando developing some dog. And now that he has a little more pressure on him, what is he going to do with that dog? And the reason I say is he developing some dog is that he did finally get a start where he was asserting himself. Now, did it
Mhm.
go the way he wanted it to go? No. We can all agree he did not want to run off the track. But it was, I don't want to say impressive. That feels like giving too much credit. I'll just say I was proud to see him finally try in the face of Max,
Yeah.
and to really stick his elbow out. And I hope that it going wrong does not mean he won't do it again. Because spoiler alert, as we'll talk about later in the podcast, he's gotta do it again. Because it's gonna be a spicy last couple of races. Um,
Right?
on the flip side of that start, what the beep is going on with Oscar? That start was atrocious, and he wasn't able to really recover throughout the race. We'll talk in a little bit about kind of how the end of his race went, but just seems like the promise from the beginning of the season is nowhere apparent currently.
I agree. Like, well, first of all, I'll ask about Lando. Where do we put him on the scale of X-Dog at the moment? What is his animal level?
He was at like a guppy. I believe we had him down like pretty far on the food pyramid. I would give him like a house cat, like a little
Okay.
fierce, but like
Okay.
in the process of being fierce has knocked over like 15 glass bottles, kind
Right?
of thing, where like you tried and that was good. We like that you tried to be fierce. Um, but you're not a lion yet, my friend. And so like
Yeah,
we want to see
okay.
it. We like the improvement is what I would say if I was talking to a child.
I like that. It is really sad that he got like instant karma, and so by going off track,
Right. We
we
wanted
hopefully,
positive
yeah,
reinforcement, not we
exactly.
wanted.
I was like, hopefully that doesn't deter him from doing it again. But um, you're right, because if we quickly just talk about the points, and we'll get to it after where we sit, but um, he's only at the moment 24 points ahead of the other two. And so there's, with 2 races to go, he has to like keep this lead and has a lot to do for it. He can't just, I mean, he can play it safe a little bit because he doesn't want to crash out or anything, but he still has to like get pole and win. Um, in terms of Oscar, I feel like he was, obviously he was like dominating, or like at least always P1 and P2 for such a long time. And then there was a dip in form, and I want to think it's just mental. There's like, he's clearly still a good driver, and like there's some uh moments of where we can like see what he was like in the beginning of the season. Like he was really hooping. Like, was it in Mexico that he like actually raced pretty well? He just had some bad luck.
Right.
And then this time too, he like was okay. It wasn't like, I wouldn't say it was his best weekend or best race, but he like didn't drive poorly. Um, I almost think though that he's getting in his head too much and trying to play it too safe, where he's like, okay, I'm still in contention for the title. I've like lost that first spot in the drivers' championship, but if I do anything more and like potentially crash out or DNF or whatever it is, then that'll hurt him even more. So I almost wonder if he's trying to now just like keep a P2 spot in the championship, or what. Like he's one of those quiet assassins where he like always wants to win, and he's really disappointed if he doesn't get any sort of win or like a pole position or anything. But it's weird what's kind of going on with him in terms of how he's performing on the track.
Yeah, and I think your theory of like almost playing it too safe might be correct. It's just that's not fun to watch. You know what I mean?
No.
Like
Yeah.
not that, he needs to do what I find the most fun. But it is frustrating in a lot of ways to watch somebody who we thought had a lot of promise go back to being kind of boring. And so
Yeah.
that is a little frustrating. I'll say some other highlights from the race before we get to the elephant in the room is that Lewis got into the points from 20th position, which was pretty impressive. Now, he still had a lot to say after this race about saying he just wants the season to be over, and then may have implied he wants next season to be over as well,
Yeah.
which is a Ferrari Delulu fan. That doesn't feel good. We're going to choose to believe in the Delulu that he was only talking about this season, and that next season is definitely gonna go great. But that was pretty cool to see him do so well, even if he was frustrated by his performance. We also have to highlight the Mercedes really had a fantastic race,
Yeah.
even in spite of having some mechanical issues, including some steering issues. Kimmy had a tire masterclass. Like, I don't understand how he did what he did. Um,
Right.
and to see the two of them do so well was really impressive. Um, and I, for one, did not anticipate Mercedes doing that well this race, and so it was cool to see how that happened. What are your thoughts on the races before we talk about the elephant?
Yeah, well, Lewis, I think he's being a bit hard on himself. Like we know in he finished qualifying in P20. That's where he started from. Complete back of the grid. I think Yuki was the only one who started from the pit lane. And then going up to the points from that, like you said, is still really good. He was up to P8 is what he finished. P10 is really where it was. P8 is where he ended after the thing that happened that we'll talk about. And I don't know. It's like his emotions confuse me sometimes. And so I was every time there's a race weekend, I like to listen to the radio recap afterwards because I think it gives you a bit of insight to the race that they can't show on the broadcast. Like they can't show all of it. And right at the beginning, before they start, he's like telling his team, he's like, with every challenge there's an opportunity. And then was being super inspirational, and I think it was like a pep talk not just to them but to himself as well. So I think he's trying really hard to still enjoy it, and like obviously the season hasn't gone how we want it to go and how he has wanted it to go, but he's still putting out great like drives like this. Like we still know how good he is, and he still has that potential to be able to like podium and win and whatnot. Next year, obviously, with all the like regulation changes, who knows what's going to happen. So hopefully it like ends up being good. But yeah, it's like he's trying to hype himself up, but he's also so hard on himself. So I hope that what he was saying was just frustration. Not we'll stay on Delulu Island with that, where he's just like, no, it's just this season's almost over. Let's just get to next season. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how badly the Ferrari boys need a cheerleader because Charles is kind of the same
yeah,
way. Where like Charles ended the race in sixth, I think, either fifth or
yeah,
sixth. And he was like, "Oh, unacceptable." And it's like, my guy, the people in front of you had like fantastic races. You did pretty okay, dude.
right?
And like he was just his like unacceptable comments. I'm always like, "Sweet, Charles." And then off the grid, he's like seems like an adorable golden retriever. And Lewis kind of
Yeah,
seems the same sometimes. And I'm like, I don't, but that's how you become a champion, I guess, is that you're really harsh in that way. Personal
I guess
critique.
so.
What's that we hear in the background? Oh no, is that the disqualification music? I'm gonna, you know what? Surprise me in editing this, whoever edits this. Come up with some disqualification music. Um,
I was about to do some sound effects, and I was like, no, let's
oh,
not do that right now.
what is it? Like womp womp.
Yeah, something like
Um,
that. That's sad
um,
trombone.
yeah. So fun behind the scenes content. Deepti, being ahead of most of us, was awake when the disqualification came in and posted in our group chat, "Oh my gosh, I think McLaren just got disqualified." But it was a little sketchy because it had not officially come out. It was like from a reporter or whatever. And I happened to be awake at 5:30 Eastern time, see it, and I was like, "No, that can't be right." And went on Twitter. Nonetheless, it became apparent that in fact McLaren had both been disqualified for exceeding plank height. And so that is one of those things where neither of the drivers had control over that. But it is in fact a strictly enforced rule. It is
Hmm.
a little funny that they spent all that time at the end of the race being worried that Lando was going to run out of fuel for it to be something different than fuel. Because once the fuel thing got resolved, everybody was like, okay, no more disqualifications. We're all good. They had enough fuel. And then it was like, just kidding. A secret
Just
second
kidding.
reason why you're disqualified. This has happened to other drivers. It happened to Lewis earlier this season in China. It's happened to McLaren before in past seasons, and so that's kind of an interesting note. But what does that mean for the race? Well, it means that our first and fourth finisher are now off the podium. And guess what? Congrats, Mercedes. You now have two people on the podium. Max stays in first.
Hey,
And
Kimmy.
yay for Kimmy, which was very sweet to see. Everybody else moves up at least one or two places. And so it was exciting in that regard. But it was certainly an interesting way to end the race. The new final results are Max, George, Kimmy, followed by Charles, Carlos, our good friend Isaac in his baby bull, all the way up there, which was pretty cool to see. Nico, what are you doing here, sir? Lewis, Esteban, and Ollie. What the what?
Double
Um,
house.
yeah, so double Haas in the points was pretty fun as kind of a final um, note from that race. But when we come back in just a second, we're going to talk about what that disqualification means for the rest of the
Real quick,
season.
I'm trying to
Oh, go
find
ahead.
the numbers of why or like how much McLaren's planks were not thick enough, because it's really just like a hair's width. That's how minimal we're talking about. And I think Lando's was even like less. Let me find these numbers really quick. I know it's like the plank width has to be, or thickness has to be 9 millimeters or so, and it can't be less than that. And Lando's was like 8.9 something, so literally just a fraction of a millimeter off. And Oscar's was 8.7, so he actually wore his plank down a bit more. And I guess that happens like either going over the curbs a lot. I heard or read that this track caused like the car to porpoise a lot, which we haven't really heard much about porpoising this season. Teams have kind of learned how to get rid of that, but I guess the car, as it was porpoising, like that eats away at some of the plank as well. And so literally by like a hair's width, they got disqualified, which is sad, but like that's the rules, and that's one that they're super strict on. And it's also, I don't think there's like sensors or anything that you can tell. Like you might just by the amount of sparking be able to see how low to the ground the car is, but I don't think it's something that you would be able to like know ahead of time to mitigate during the race. So that's why I think like there are some, I won't even say conspiracies, but things that people online are saying. They're like, oh, surely they had to know at the end, like they were just saying it was a fuel issue, but really they were just telling Lando to like lift and coast so that he doesn't wear away at the plank even more. But in that case, it would be weird of like why they would tell only Lando that and not Oscar that. And so there's some back and forth of if about people thinking whether or not they knew. But in my opinion, I don't think they did. I don't think that's something that you can kind of like control really.
Yeah, and I will say, like, there was some discussion post race of everybody being like, that was a lot of sparking. Like, it seemed like
Mhm.
McLaren was sparking a lot more, but nobody had really thought about what the sparking might actually mean in practicality. And so that was kind of an interesting indicator that we all sort of missed, that nobody had really thought about the fact that, oh, if McLaren's sparking that much, it must mean that their plank height is messed up in some capacity. I have heard discussion of, does that mean that they're going to have to adjust more for the final two races? And is that going to impact their speed? I gotta say, they still seem the fastest team on the grid in pure speed. Yeah. So even if they do adjust it, you know, I don't know how big of an impact it'll have, but it certainly does place some pressure on the mechanics to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because we'll talk about kind of what the reality of the rest of the season looks like when we come back in just a moment. And we're back. So Deepti, let's talk a little bit about what this means for the rest of the season. I'm going to kind of telegraph some things first. So we are currently sitting at, after Mexico City, the Drivers' Championship. We have Norris with 390 points. We have Piastri and Verstappen tied at 366. And then we have a distant third and fourth with Russell at 258 and Leclerc at 210. So we can kind of eliminate Russell and Leclerc at this point from contention. But as Deepti mentioned earlier, Norris is not that far ahead. In the final two races, there will be 58 points available. There will be 33 in Qatar because there'll be a sprint. So 33 being the maximum that they could get if they won both the sprint and the race. And then 25 points in Abu Dhabi. And so it becomes a lot more of a tense final two races than we were anticipating. What do you think about what the rest of the season's going to look like for those three drivers?
To be honest, well, as like from a fan's perspective, I can't be more excited because like, it seemed like McLaren and even Oscar might be running away with it kind of earlier on in the season. And now that we have a 3-driver race, it's like F1 fans' dream, honestly, to have such a close one after Max has just been like dominating the last several seasons. In terms of how it's gonna go, I feel like Lando's been on the up and up, and like he's just gonna ride this momentum, and I think he'll be able to hold on. And like, there's really, if he wins, I think that's it. Like, he just needs to win to lock down the championship, if I'm doing the math correctly. Unless I guess the sprint being in there like puts a wrench in things a little bit. But if he
wins out all three, then he like absolutely does it. If he does 2 out of the 3, I think he still is able to win. But the question becomes, for a person who notoriously on this podcast we have questioned their mental fortitude of will, are they going to be able to do it? And the other big question, in my opinion, is papaya rules. We have stopped talking about it a little bit. Obviously they have been in competition, but papaya rules hasn't really come up. And is it going to come back in action? Are they going to ask Oscar to do any sort of blocking? Are they going to ask Oscar to sacrifice his race? The last we heard, they still said we were never picking a driver. Okay, well, you got to put your money where your mouth is now that it's the end of the season and you may in fact have to pick a driver.
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's a tough situation for them too, because how do you, you could choose by who's ahead, but there's a point of like, okay, let's try to prevent Max from winning, but also Oscar is right there and still has a chance to clinch or to like get it. And so it's difficult. I think for Qatar, there won't be papaya rules in play, but depending on what happens and if the championship is still in play by Abu Dhabi, then maybe. And obviously it depends how all 3 of them do this next race. Max, I just think it's going to get messy, and I have a feeling that like Max is going to be able to get it. Something in me says that Max will be able to win and like get enough points. He's really good at the sprints, and he'll just slowly by like in Abu Dhabi he'll probably get it, and so it'll be such like a, I don't even know, like McLaren would have blown it in like a massive way when he does. But that's where my feeling is right now.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is Max sort of, he is not someone to necessarily play it safe. And for him, there's really no downside, right? Second or third doesn't matter. The only thing to him that matters is coming in first. So he can afford to sort of make the wild move or to make the risky move, whereas Lando is trying his hardest. He needs to finish the race. He needs to finish ahead of Max, or at least close enough to Max that he stays in there. So that sort of strategy, change for the two of them is interesting in that regard because playing it safe versus taking the risk will make it very entertaining from a fan's perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, you know, the team did not push back. They knew that their plane kites were wrong. But there's a small part of me that's like, did y'all just do this to like manufacture some drama? Was this like an easy way for y'all to like make sure we all tune in for these last two races? And that'll be kind of, it is like more interesting now, you know? It like some people who have checked out are kind of back in. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of an interesting um, conundrum now of like what is going to happen. And like you,
Yeah.
I sort of feel like as much as I complimented Lando earlier on in this podcast, I still deep down am like, until you do it, I'm not going to believe you can do it, you know?
Yeah, I have to see it. And we know Max can do it. We've seen him do it many times, and which is why I think like he's won 4 of the last 7 races. And so just on that stat from a car that's not as good as the McLaren's, I think he just like we know he has that dog and he can come out and just do it. And knowing how close it is now, like you said, he really has nothing to lose. And so he's just gonna go for it. And I think we've talked about this in our chat, and like Verstappen has become a much more likable character this season for all of us. And so I honestly won't even be mad if I see him win from like how far down he was and coming back like this. I think I much prefer this Max than like the one we've seen in the past couple seasons.
Absolutely. It like sucks how much they're making us care. You know what I mean? Or like
Yeah.
the redemption arc was not something I anticipated happening this season. And so that has been kind of interesting to see. On the constructors side of the house, you know, first place is already done. McLaren has won the constructors championship. Congrats to McLaren. The race for second is pretty tight though. Mercedes is at 431, Red Bull is at 391, and Ferrari is at 378. As a reminder, in addition to the amount of money you win for your constructors completion, which all of these teams care about a lot because it does go towards that cost cap, it also changes the amount of wind tunnel time you get. And with going into 2026, that's pretty important. So the further down you fall, the more wind tunnel time you get. And so that is like an interesting like wind tunnel time versus cash
Yeah.
equation and what is more valuable. I think it's likely that it's Mercedes who comes in second because their drivers kind of all around are doing well. Like Kimi seems to be getting closer to the top now and again. Red Bull, Liam Lawson, where are you at, my guy? Like what's going on? Or not Liam Lawson, sorry, Yuki, where are you at?
Yuki.
Sorry, the trauma from Liam Lawson being it earlier. Like Yuki is just not really in play. Like he's getting into points occasionally, but like not in a way that is significant to help
I mean,
Max.
yeah, we just said Max of the 391 Red Bull points, Max is responsible for 366 of them.
Right.
Like that's how
Dominant.
useless Yuki has
Yeah.
been.
And so I think it really comes down to Mercedes or Ferrari are either of those teams getting the fourth and fifth points, or God forbid
Yeah.
something happens and there's a big crash, are they getting the second and third points? And so that'll be kind of interesting to keep our eye on. Like I said, it's likely that it is Mercedes, just based on current performance, but you know, papaya rules. Things could go crazy. We don't know what's going to happen. So what are your thoughts on the constructors championship?
Yeah, I like basically like you said, I think it's really like both drivers on Mercedes and both drivers on Ferrari against Max. Like both the drivers on the other two teams have to perform and get in the points. Like they need double points every time to be able, because Max is now consistently like top 3, which is like 15 points minimum. So the others need to get more than that each race, and that means both drivers in the points. I hope Kimi stays on this run, and like if he does, then I think Mercedes will kind of lock it in. But I don't know. I'm still hoping like Ferrari has like a crazy fantastic weekend. They have 2 more chances to do that, and if so, they'll jump up. But yeah, you're right. At this point, like it's kind of a payoff between do we want the money or do we want wind tunnel time with all the new regulations and things. So in reality, I feel like getting P2 versus P4, I'm not actually sure what the difference in money is. We already know all these 3 teams are rich enough anyway. But for them, it would be interesting to get like an inside look or like listen to what the thoughts are of the team, what they would prefer, like if they really do care between like P2, P3, or P4 in terms of money versus time.
Yeah, and I will say, like, they're never gonna admit that they're sabotaging in any kind of way, but like you could see them being like, listen, it's fine. It's like
Yeah.
let's wrap up the season kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that'll just be interesting. Who knows? Maybe Delulu Island has been in the Middle East this whole time, and we're just rounding into form and
Right?
heading out there. Who knows? Well, when we come back, we'll do kind of a recap of our prediction and talk about some more silly aspects of the race. So join us in just a second. All right, so we made predictions. I don't think anyone predicted that we would have a DQ. As a reminder, the actual podium ended up being Max, George, and Kimmy after the disqualification. I will say that Kyle and Deepti got the closest in that they both had Max and George on the podium. So Kyle had Max, Charles, George, I wish. Deepti had Max, George, Lewis. Again, I wish. Donald had George, Lando, Oscar. You get 1 point, Donald. Andre, my beloved, had Lando, Oscar, Charles. Again, I appreciate some drama, so I guess I don't wish, but I would have liked Charles to have made it into third. And so we did not get a perfect score this time. RIP our
But
predictions.
we didn't forget about George.
We didn't. In fact, we did some remembering of George. Congratulations, George. By the way, George looked fantastic on the cool down lap in the Lego car. He, again, the man knows how to sell things. You can say that he is a wooden British boy, but he certainly is the best at the press and media side of the house, in that he will happily, or at least pretend to be happy, play along with the dumb antics that F1 makes him participate in, and he won't complain. On the constructors side, Mercedes got the most points this race with 33. McLaren, Aston Martin, and Alpine tied at the bottom with 0. I put 9 for some reason, but I definitely meant 0. So that's fun. We had a new friend at the bottom. McLaren, welcome back into the filth, my guys.
There you are. Welcome back.
So Kyle was correct with Mercedes being first, and then he wrote McLaren, papaya crash out happening, and then he wrote today, Lamau, not how I expected it to happen. So that was pretty funny that Kyle perfectly predicted it, just indirectly. Donald said the Mercedes would have the most and Haas would have the least. Jokes, double Haas in the points, baby.
Double Haas.
USA until we have Cadillac. Andre said most Ferrari, RIP, least Baby Bulls. Nope, Isaac got into points.
Isaac.
So way to go, Isaac. And then Deepti had most Mercedes, least Aston Martin. Congratulations, Deepti. You correctly predicted that while Lance Stroll was in the upper parts of qualifying, he would in fact not be able to pull it off as we all anticipated.
He did not even complete half a lap. Not
No.
necessarily his fault, but still.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I just think he puts out the vibes into the universe that
Yep.
he doesn't want to be in the race anymore, and the universe is like, word, let's do it. All right, now it's on to your favorite section of the week. We're going to talk about our Zoomy boys and our Gloomy boys, and I'm going to start with Kyle. Kyle said his Zoomy boy in spirit is Dorian Pin, who won the F1 Academy, which is really exciting. We have now had a different F1 Academy champion each year, which I think is really cool to see that it's not one team dominating. It was also very cool to see Mercedes as a team rally around Dorian and go pick her up. You had both George and Kimmy.
Mercedes.
Yeah, cheering. You had Toto pulling her out of the car and saying congratulations. So it was really cool to see. Highly encourage folks to watch F1 Academy. This weekend's races were also pretty chaotic. We had some mechanical failures. We had some folks crashing. And so it was really exciting this season, and it'll be cool to see it continue to grow and to kind of become more of a mainstay race. And so highly encourage y'all to watch it next year. Before we talk about ours, Deepti, I'm gonna also read Donald's. He said Zoomy, Kimmy, Gloomy, McLaren makes sense. I similarly said Kimmy. I think it's really cool to see him kind of prove that Mercedes made a good bet. Um, it was a huge risk to give up Lewis, although Lewis is the one who made the final decision. They still didn't give him an offer that he felt like was worthy of him staying at Mercedes. And so it is kind of cool to see, he's not a world champion yet, but he's also not no longer racing, which some of the babies are at the end of the season. And so that has been cool to see him kind of be so successful. So I said Kimmy. And then Oscar is kind of self-explanatory. It just seems like the spark is kind of gone. I don't know why that is. I'm sad for him. I want him to be doing better. And I
Yeah.
just realized in talking about Kyle's Zoomy, I didn't talk about his Gloomy, which is Liam Lawson. My guy, you are just not good at the driving right now, and it sucks. You're good at the TikToks, so that's kind of fun,
Yeah, he's great at the TikToks.
but the driving, not so much. So.
Just a note on Kimmy again and giving him his flowers. He, like we said, he like started P17, worked his way up and finished P5, and that was with a 5 second penalty that is like honestly super harsh because I mean there was slight motion. He got it for a jump start. There was very, very slight motion in his like front left wheel right before the lights went out, which is what they got called on. It's interesting that his engineers like we see no data on it, so it's not like they looked at like video evidence. They like look at the data to see if like the wheels were actually moving, and it didn't even pick it up, and so they were like, "This is bogus." But yeah, with the 5 second penalty, he finished P5. He was actually like race wise finished P4, so that was like even more impressive. And then obviously with the double DQ, got onto the podium. But massive race from him, and I think we touched on it earlier. This is a 50 lap race, and his second stint, like his main stint, was 48 laps. He was basically on the same tire the entire race, which is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it's just wild. And at a certain point, they like started coming back around, and you could tell that his engineers were like, "We just what? Why? We don't understand. Why is this happening?"
Yeah.
And so that is crazy.
Um, my Zoomy boy, I said the Zoomy is Lewis during his hot lap before the race. And why do I say that? Is because Lewis was not just blessed. We were all blessed with the presence of Beyonce at this Grand Prix and Beyonce's outfit and her going on a hot lap with Lewis, which, if you haven't watched the footage, watch the footage. He did it with Jay-Z as well, but we don't talk about him. We're talking about Beyonce. And yeah, he honestly, even he's a winner. He still had a good race weekend, but he's a winner because of that and because he was able to do that. So that looked fun. I think that helped get a lot more people into F1, or at least they watched this race because of her, because she posted right before it. And so thank you, Beyonce, for getting more fans into F1.
I have
And
never felt more like that cartoon wolf that's eyes go like a wooga than when I saw that picture. And I don't even like I'm not even attracted to women, and I still was like,
yeah,
"Oh, okay.
you're like, I
I
get
get
the
it."
appeal. It's like,
Yeah.
I get it. And my gloomy is Alex Albon. Um, I just I'm sad for the Williams always, but he he didn't like have the best qualifying. He was out in Q1, and then during the race, he had some like front wing damage and went to go pit, and like they didn't realize, I guess, he had the damage, or like I don't know, there was some miscommunication. There's some word that the radio wasn't working between him and the pit wall, and so you can see him when he goes into the pits. He's like pointing at his front wing, and then on the radio as well, he's like front wing, and they don't change it. And so he like goes out, has to do another lap, and then comes back in to change the front wing that was damaged. And so he loses a lot of time. And then eventually he just has to retire. And so he had a no good, very bad weekend. And yeah, I'm just kind of sad for the Williams, and I hope they will pick it up again next season because I like the duo of Carlos and Alex, and I really want them to do well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is hard to watch when Alex is such like a fun guy off the track and has not been a fun guy on the track for the last little bit. But Williams is definitely still trending in the right direction. They are certainly much better than they have been in the past. And so
Yeah.
we are hopeful that the new regs will pull off some fun things for Williams. We talked a little bit about Beyonce gracing us with her presence, but here's some other fun things that happened off the track. Um, Again, this might not matter to anybody, but if you didn't know, Shaun White and Nina Dobrev used to date. They were engaged for a time, and they broke up a couple months ago because Shaun White cheated on Nina, and they were both really good friends of
Tea.
Lewis. And it came up who was going to get Lewis in the breakup, right? Normal behavior. And who was at the race but Miss Nina Dobrev looking hot as hell. And so, congratulations, you got Lewis in the breakup. We always knew Lewis was the good guy and that he would stand with the right party. But that was kind of a fun thing. Another fun thing that happened, technically on the track, but after the race, because the Vegas GP is always about a gimmick, they did this weird thing where they had Mickey conduct a fountain. And like, as a native Floridian,
Yes.
I am obligated to praise our Lord and Savior Mickey Mouse. But it what? Like, I don't why. And then they had a recreation of White Chicks with a Lego car. Terry
Yes,
Crews.
I hold on. Okay, back to Mickey 1 second. The
Okay.
Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, it was like a Fantasia meets the Bellagio water fountain musical thingy. And I was like, okay, this is really random. This is at like, mind you, I was up all night. This is around like 6 in the morning, having not slept. And so I like maybe had like was in and out of sleep a little bit. I wake up and I see Mickey conducting this thing. And
Were
it's
you
like
like,
the Bellagio
am I
fountain.
hallucinating Mickey
Yeah.
Mouse?
I was like, is this a dream? And it was to the F1 theme, and I was like, this is cool. And guys, I'm gonna burst your bubble a little bit here. It was all fake. Not that I
What?
thought Mickey was like really doing it, but I saw a TikTok later where this like girl, she's watching the race on TV, but she's also like there live in person at the Bellagio, and she turns the camera around. She's like, "Mickey's not here. The fountains are not even going." Like, she's like, "What is this?" And so they had this was a pre-taped like I don't know what they did, pre-made video of Mickey Mouse conducting Fantasia at the Bellagio, and it was fun and again gimmicky as they do in Las Vegas, but yeah, it wasn't real, which was really sad to find out afterwards. Um, there was something else about Disney that I didn't see, but like I think Franco met Minnie Mouse. There was something with that. And like Franco also proposed to Minnie Mouse.
Oh, okay. All right, Franco.
Yeah. And that's all I know about that. I need to dig into that, but that I did see something about that. So we know for now we know Franco is a Disney head and Minnie's his gal.
I will say, is the Mickey Mouse video our generation's moon landing? I am not saying the moon landing's not real. I'm unlike Ariana Grande, I believe the moon landing happened, but I'm just saying there are a lot of questions. We gotta do some investigating here.
Um,
Um, as I mentioned, they had a Lego car and
yes.
Lego glasses, and Terry Crews was singing
And
Michelle
Terry
Branch.
Crews.
Do the youths know about White Chicks? Is that a movie that has like cultural cachet beyond millennials?
I don't know. I just introduced White Chicks to one of my like friends at her bachelorette party, and I don't think it hit the same. Like there were several people there who hadn't seen it, and I'm like, no, this is our generation's thing. I'm so sad that you haven't seen it. And
Um,
like
a piece of
iconic.
Megan lore. I went to a theater to see that movie at like 12 or 13, whenever, however old I was when it came out. And I swear to God, I was the only white person in that theater. And this very sweet older black lady next to me was like, "Are you like, did you go to the
She
wrong
lost.
movie?" And I was like, "No, I think this is gonna be really funny." And it was really funny. But
It
I was
was
like
really
the precious
funny.
little angel baby going to see a movie by myself at 12
But
or
yes.
13 and picking
Oh my
French.
God, that's so funny. But for those of you who don't know and haven't had the honor of seeing this movie, which you should immediately, there's an iconic scene where Terry Crews is driving on his date with one of the white chicks, and they start singing "A Thousand Miles" by Vanessa Carlton, and he does his like da 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 da, and and he's like, "And I need you." And the thing, so there's no cool down room in at this Grand Prix, and so that like it's the cool down car as they're being driven to the podium. And so like Meghan said, this was a Lego car driven by Terry Crews, already random and weird, and we love it, gimmicky Las Vegas. But I thought actually the funniest part was if you listen closely, because they have the drivers hot mic'd then, it's actually Max who suggests that Terry starts singing. And so
Wait, I love that. So Max, the ultimate millennial, knows about white
right.
chicks.
He knows about it. And then they start it, and it's I love it. It was so cheeky. But they delivered, and it was like the most Vegas thing that could have happened, I think. Actually, that's a lie. You know what the most Vegas thing that happened?
What's the most Vegas thing that happened?
Mr. Valtteri Bottas was
Yes,
Minister
this was on my
Bottas.
list. Yes, Mr. Valtteri Bottas officiated a wedding and wasn't bad at it. Like he
Yeah.
treated it like a serious thing. I think it was in the Little White Chapel, which is famously a wedding venue in Vegas where you can get married 24 hours a day. And yeah, our man Valtteri just having side quests all over the place, and
Yeah,
I for one love that for him. I think
I
it's
love
fun.
it. What a life to have. He's just, like I said, the side quest, king of the side quest.
Yeah, and then like the only side like I'm happy for him that he's back on the grid next year, but it means less time for side quests, and that's sad.
It's true. He'll make time. He always does. If this man can do a full triathlon in his home, he will make time for the others, the side quests.
Cadillac, I know that you're listening to our podcast. You better allow that man some side quest time or enable him with a profoundly good media person who enables the side quests.
Yes.
All right, Deepti, do you have any other fun things or radio calls you want to mention? We talked a little bit about Lewis talking on the um, hot lap and kind of talking while he was driving.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there weren't really, to me, that many radio calls that were like that interesting. There's a lot of strategy discussion that was kind of interesting if you are a nerd like that, but there was nobody like making sassy comments really.
No, not too many. And like I said, I usually watch or listen to the radio recap that F1 puts out post race. And sometimes you get like a lot of the missed like interesting calls there. Um, I just I think we didn't mention, so after the first turn, basically, when Lando went a little bit too far, both Max and George overtook him. And so there's a point when Lando had to overtake not Max, sorry, George, and his engineer. He's like, "Yeah, overtake George. We're gonna go get Max." And then, of course, Max's engineer like hears that, and he's like, "Max, by the way, Lando's been told to come get you." But what's funny, what we didn't hear afterwards is like Lando being like, "What do you mean get Max? We're just slow." And so he was able to get past George quickly, but he's like, "I don't have the pace to get him." So there's that. Meanwhile, Max is doing like fastest lap after fastest lap. And then there was one more. Yes. Oh, again, it was Lewis and his engineer. It's not really a funny one, but this kind of just summarizes what the relationship has been and what like Ferrari's been like for Lewis, I think, where his engineer, he's like, "Is the pace good?" And Lewis says, "The pace is clearly not good. I'm falling so behind." And his engineer says, "Okay, try to speed up then." It's like great advice. Like
That
he
engineer
wasn't
is
trying
also on Delulu Island with us.
He's just like, "Okay, yeah, go faster." Um, and honestly, that was it. There was a point when I love Carlos on the radio because he's usually just like really chill and calm and like very monotonous, but like in the most Carlos way. And so there was a point when he just comes on, he's like, "I have a plastic bag stuck on my mirror." And you can just, this engineer's just like, "Copy a what?" And he's like, "A plastic bag. It's on my mirror." And they're like, "Okay, great. Okay, VSC's ending. Just go fast." So I don't know what happened to the plastic bag, if it was stayed on there or if it just flew off eventually. But That was it. There was not really, like we said, it was like the race itself was kind of boring. Like there weren't even very many fun radio calls.
Yeah, it was boring in the moment, and then in the aftermath has made the rest of the season very
Yeah.
exciting. And so for that, we will
There were more fun.
be thankful. Well, right now everyone is flying across the world because the Qatar GP is coming up, and they will be sprinting across because it'll be this Sunday, the 30th, which is kind of wild that they can fly that far. I, as a travel nerd, would love to know like how they're doing the time shifting and like on the planes if they're wearing the blue glasses and then they're putting on the eye
Yeah.
covers and like how that's all happening and when they're doing their caffeine. So if anybody wants to do a day in the life of flying to the Middle East from Las Vegas, there's a free content idea, F1 drivers. But we're excited to be going to these final two races. So join us in listening. We will likely have a preview out later this week. I don't want to promise anything because if I promise, then something catastrophic is going to happen that would cause us not to. But from these two gals in the girls' night edition of DRSFC, we want to say thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to finishing out the season with you. And vroom vroom.
Vroom, vroom.